All right, let's talk about a huge topic for any Australian business right now: building a responsible and profitable AI strategy. With AI adoption just exploding, the question really isn't if you should use it anymore. The real question is how you're going to govern it. Because getting that right, that's where the real competitive advantage is.
So, here's how we're going to break this all down today. First, we'll unpack the AI dilemma happening right here in Australia. Then we'll look to Singapore for a fantastic practical blueprint. We'll dive into 3 actionable steps from that blueprint: governance, human oversight, and operations. And finally, we'll look at the real, tangible payoff for your business.
Okay, first up, let's set the scene here in Australia. We've got this massive rush to adopt AI, which is great, but it's also creating a really critical gap. A gap between all that ambition and the actual readiness to handle it.
And just how big is that gap? Well, a recent Accenture report found that while AI adoption is absolutely soaring across the Asia-Pacific region, a shockingly low 1% of companies say they are fully prepared to deal with the risks. Just 1%. That's a staggering number.
And look, the pressure is really starting to mount from the top. The Australian government is sending some very clear signals. As Baker McKenzie points out here, it's not enough to just plug in the AI and hope for the best. There's a major focus now on making sure you can prove its development and deployment is safe and ethical.
So, the challenge is pretty clear. Where can Australian businesses look for a model that actually works? A practical, proven path forward? Well, the good news is we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can look to our neighbors in Singapore.
And this is it: Singapore's Model AI Governance Framework. Now, what makes this thing so powerful, so different, is that it's not just a bunch of abstract, high-level ideas. It is specifically designed to translate those big ethical principles into practical, actionable steps that a real business can actually use.
And what's really smart about this framework is the balance it strikes. It is explicitly pro-innovation. It wants you to grow and build new things, but it grounds that innovation in accountability and practical steps. And that's the magic combination for building trust with customers, with regulators, with everyone.
All right, let's get into the first practical step. This is all about building a solid foundation for AI inside your company. Think of it as creating your AI command center. So, 3 key things here. First, you have to establish clear roles. Who is responsible for what? No ambiguity. Second, you've got to train your people. They need to know how to interpret what the AI is telling them and how to manage the risks. And finally, this isn't a set-it-and-forget-it deal. You have to review your governance structures regularly to make sure they're still working. And if you're wondering what this looks like in the real world, check out what MasterCard did. They built a dedicated AI governance council. They brought leaders from data, privacy, security, and the data science teams all to the same table. This means from the very start, ethics and security are baked right into the process, not bolted on at the end. Okay, so you've got your command center in place. The next critical decision you have to make is defining the precise relationship between your people and your AI. It really boils down to this fundamental question that every company has to answer for every single AI model they use. The AI is making decisions. So, who is ultimately in charge? And the Singapore framework gives us 2 really clear models for this. For those high-stakes, tricky decisions, think medical diagnoses or major financial approvals, you want a human in the loop. A person is always involved. But for more routine, automated tasks, a human over the loop makes more sense. Here, the AI runs the show, but a person is supervising, ready to jump in if something looks off. All right, time to roll up our sleeves and get into the nitty-gritty. This is about the day-to-day discipline you need to manage AI effectively, from the data it eats to the decisions it spits out. So, this step really focuses on 3 big areas. First, data governance. Garbage in, garbage out, right? You need high-quality, representative data. Second, model management. Your algorithm has to be explainable, repeatable, and tough. And third, stakeholder communication. You have to be transparent with your customers and partners about how you're using AI.
And that point about explainability, it is absolutely essential for building trust, and it doesn't have to be super complicated.
I mean, just look at Facebook's Why You're Seeing This Post feature. It's a really simple, elegant way of just pulling back the curtain a little bit and helping users understand the AI's logic. And get this, to make this all even more practical, Singapore's government didn't just write a framework. They actually built a tool. It's called AI Verify, and it's an open-source toolkit that lets companies run technical tests on their own AI systems to check for things like fairness, robustness, and, you guessed it, explainability.
Okay, so you do all this work. You build the structures. You manage the operations. You define the human role. What's the real-world payoff for your organization? Why does all of this really matter?
Well, for starters, the clock is ticking. Seriously, just look at how fast the regulatory landscape is moving here in Australia. Just in 2024, we saw the government signaling mandatory rules for high-risk AI and new security guidelines from the ASCC. And with new privacy rules on the way, being proactive isn't just a good idea, it's becoming an urgent business necessity.
So here is the bottom line. Good governance isn't about slowing you down. It's the exact opposite. It's what enables smart innovation. It's how you build a real competitive advantage, how you earn that sticky customer loyalty, and how you future-proof your business against the regulation that you know is coming.
So, I'll leave you with one final thought to take back to your team. As AI gets more and more woven into the fabric of your company, who is it in your organization that's taking the lead? Who is building your blueprint for responsible and ultimately much more profitable growth?